I was sitting in my usual corner of the coffee shop, watching the rain slide down the window, feeling more at peace than I had in years. 2 years had passed since Diane and I signed the divorce papers, and honestly, I'd moved on. She remarried a guy named Brad about 6 months ago, and from what I heard through mutual friends, they seemed happy. Good for them. I was not bitter. I was just living my life quietly the way I preferred it. Most people thought I was unemployed, drifting through life without direction. They had no idea what I actually did, and I liked it that way. But today, that carefully maintained anonymity was about to shatter in the most unexpected way. Before I tell you how my ex and her new husband's world came crashing down, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see how karma works in real time. Trust me, you will want to stick around for what happens next. Diane and I met 5 years ago through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue. The connection was instant. We talked for hours that night about everything and nothing, and within 3 months we were inseparable. A year later, we got married in a small ceremony by the lake. Those first 2 years felt like a dream, but dreams have a way of fading when reality sets in. Back then, I was in the early stages of building TechVance Solutions, a software company I founded with my own savings and a mountain of hope. The beginning was brutal. I worked 16-hour days, sometimes sleeping on the office couch, because going home meant losing 3 hours of productivity. I missed anniversaries. I forgot birthdays. I canceled date nights because a client needed an emergency fix or a pitch meeting ran late. Diane tried to be understanding at first. She would leave dinner in the fridge with little notes that said things like, "Eat something," or "I miss you." But as months turned into years, those notes stopped coming. The warmth in her voice when I finally came home late turned cold. The space between us grew wider than any physical distance. She started saying things like, "You care more about that company than you care about me," or "We never have any money for anything nice." I tried to explain that startups take time, that success does not happen overnight, that I was building something for our future. But she could not see it. All she saw was a husband who was never there and a bank account that stayed stubbornly modest while I poured everything into the business. 2 years ago, she sat me down at the kitchen table with papers already drawn up. "I cannot do this anymore, Cecil," she said, her voice flat and tired. "You are married to your work, not to me. I deserve someone who is actually present." I did not fight it, Ed. What could I say? She was not entirely wrong. I signed the papers, moved out within a week, and that was that. Clean break, no drama. Just two people who wanted different things walking away from each other. What Diane did not know, what nobody knew except my lawyer and accountant, was that TechVance Solutions had started taking off right around the time we separated. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, a major tech conglomerate approached me about acquisition. They wanted the software, the client based the whole operation. But I negotiated something different. Instead of selling outright, I structured a deal where they would infuse capital and resources while I retained 80% ownership as a silent partner. On paper, to the outside world, the company was now part of a larger corporate entity. But in reality, I still controlled every major decision. I could hire, I could fire, I could walk into any meeting and override anyone. I just chose not to advertise that fact. Guys, why the secrecy? Because after the divorce, I learned something valuable about people. They treat you differently based on what they think you have. When they thought I was struggling, some showed pity. Others showed contempt. But nobody showed me genuine respect for who I was, just for what I appeared to be. So I decided to live simply. I kept my modest apartment. I drove the same 10-year-old sedan. I dressed in jeans and plain shirts. I worked remotely from coffee shops and libraries, attending corporate meetings through video calls with my camera off or through encrypted emails. To anyone looking, I was just another guy with a laptop and too much free time. And I was fine with that. More than fine. I was free. That afternoon, I was reviewing quarterly reports on my laptop, sipping an overpriced latte when the door chimed and a group walked in. I glanced up out of habit and felt my stomach drop. Diane. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, styled in a sleek bob. She wore a designer coat I definitely could not have afforded during our marriage. And next to her, with his arm draped possessively around her shoulders, was Brad. Tall, clean cut, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Or at least more than what people thought was my monthly rent. They were not alone. Three other men accompanied them, all dressed similarly, all carrying that same air of self-satisfied confidence that comes from believing you have made it. They did not notice me tucked in the corner behind a potted plant. They were too busy laughing, too caught up in their own conversation as they ordered drinks and settled into a large table near the center of the room. I should have left. I should have packed up my laptop and slipped out before they saw me. But something kept me rooted to my chair. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to see if Diane really was as happy as she looked. Brad was talking loudly enough that I could hear every word without even trying. So, yeah, I just got promoted to senior marketing manager. He announced, his voice dripping with pride. 120,000 a year, full benefits, corner office on the 14th floor. TechVance Solutions takes care of their people, man. My coffee nearly went down the wrong pipe. TechVance Solutions. He worked at my company. I had been so hands-off with day-to-day operations that I did not even recognize most of the mid-level staff anymore. But here was my ex-wife's new husband, bragging about working at the company I owned. One of his friends, a guy with slicked back hair who introduced himself as Justin, whistled low. That is solid, dude. You are killing it. Company culture is amazing too, Brad continued. They just renovated the whole building. New gym, rooftop, lounge, top of the line, everything. Honestly, it is the best place I have ever worked. I felt a weird sense of pride hearing that, even under the circumstances. At least I knew my investment in employee satisfaction was paying off. Diane smiled at Brad, her hand resting on his arm. I am so proud of you, honey. You work so hard. Another friend, stockier with a beard, who they called Kyle, leaned forward. Hey, Diane, what about your ex? What is that guy up to these days? The table went quiet for a beat. I stopped breathing. Diane shrugged, her expression somewhere between indifferent and slightly embarrassed. Honestly, I have no idea. Last I heard, he was still unemployed. Just kind of drifting, I guess. Brad laughed, a sharp bark of amusement that cut through the ambient noise of the coffee shop. Wait, seriously, your ex-husband does not have a job? Man, you really dodged a bullet there, babe. Justin joined in. No kidding. What kind of guy lets himself go like that? Did he even try to find work? The third friend, Greg, a lanky guy with glasses, chimed in. I think I heard he just sits in coffee shops all day, like literally just camps out with a laptop pretending to be busy. It is kind of sad, honestly. They all laughed. Diane did not defend me. She did not say anything. She just smiled awkwardly and sipped her drink. And somehow that hurt more than the laughter. Brad shook his head, still grinning. I do not get it, man. How does a grown man just give up like that? No ambition, no drive. I would be embarrassed to even show my face in public if I were him. He looked at Diane with exaggerated sympathy. I am so glad you got out of that situation. You deserve someone who can actually provide, someone with a future. Something inside me snapped. Not in anger, not in sadness, just in clarity. I had spent 2 years quietly rebuilding my life, letting people think whatever they wanted about me because their opinions did not matter. But sitting there listening to these people, especially Brad, mock me for a situation they knew nothing about, I realized something. Silence was not always strength. Sometimes it was just letting people get away with being cruel. I closed my laptop slowly, deliberately. I stood up, smoothed down my shirt, and walked over to their table. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Excuse me, I said, my voice calm and polite. 5 heads turned toward me. Diane's eyes went wide, her face drained of color. Cecil, she whispered. Brad looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to something like amusement mixed with disdain. Oh, hey man, long time no see. I kept my tone friendly conversational. I am sorry, I was not trying to eavesdrop, but I could not help overhearing you mention TechVance Solutions. That is a great company. Brad's smile widened cockier now. Yeah, it really is. Best place I have ever worked. But then again, I guess you would not know much about that, would you? His friends snickered. Diane looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I nodded thoughtfully. You are right, I probably would not know much about working there. But I do know a few things about the company. Brad leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Oh yeah, you apply there or something? I hate to break it to you, man, but they have pretty high standards. I am sure they do, I said evenly. Actually, I was just curious. You said you work in marketing. Senior Marketing Manager, Brad corrected, emphasizing the title. Maybe you have heard of it. It is a real job, with a salary and responsibilities. Greg and Justin were barely containing their laughter now. Kyle looked uncomfortable but said nothing. That is impressive, I said. Well, I will let you all get back to your afternoon. But hey, maybe I will see you around the office sometime. Brad frowned. What do you mean you do not work there? I smiled. Not in the way you think. But I am around. Enjoy your coffee. I turned and walked out of the shop, leaving them in confused silence. Behind me, I heard Brad mutter, "What the hell was that about?" The moment I got home, I pulled out my phone and called Patricia, my executive assistant, and one of the only people in the company who knew my true role. She picked up on the second ring. Cecil, hi. What is up? I need you to schedule an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. I said, pacing my living room. All department heads, senior management, and specifically the entire marketing team. Mandatory attendance. There was a pause. That is a lot of people on short notice. Can I ask what this is about, a performance review? I said, I want to go over some concerns about workplace culture and employee conduct. Patricia knew better than to ask questions when I used that tone. I will send out the emails within the hour. Anything else? Yes, pull the personnel files for Brad Hutchins, Justin Crow, Kyle Mendez, and Greg Farmer. I want full employment history performance reviews and any HR complaints or incident reports. Send them to my secure email tonight. On it, she said. Should I be worried? Not you, I said. But some people should be. 3 hours later, my inbox pinged with 4 detailed files. I made a fresh pot of coffee and settled in to read. Brad Hutchins, Senior Marketing Manager. Hired 8 months ago. Performance reviews were mediocre at best. Multiple comments from colleagues about his tendency to take credit for team projects. 3 separate HR complaints about his condescending attitude toward junior staff, particularly women. 1 formal warning issued 2 months ago that I had apparently never been informed about. Justin Crow, marketing analyst. Chronic lateness. Missed deadlines on 3 major campaigns in the last quarter. Written up twice. Kyle Mendez, data coordinator. 2 anomalies flagged in his quarterly report suggesting inflated metrics. IT had noted suspicious activity in his access logs. Potential data manipulation. Greg Farmer, communications specialist. 1 formal complaint filed by a female intern about inappropriate comments. The complaint was investigated but deemed inconclusive due to lack of witnesses. However, 2 other women had informally reported similar behavior to their supervisors, but never filed official complaints. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. Even without the coffee shop incident, these 4 had no business being employed at my company. But the fact that they had spent their afternoon mocking someone they knew nothing about while representing my organization made the decision easier. I sent Patricia a follow-up email with clear instructions. Prepare termination letters for these 4 individuals, effective immediately following tomorrow's meeting. Severance per standard contract terms. Security will escort them out, no exceptions. Her reply came back within minutes. Understood. Documents will be ready by 8 a.m. I barely slept that night. Not because I felt guilty, I did not, but because I kept imagining Brad's face when he realized who I was. Part of me felt petty for looking forward to it, but a larger part of me felt like this was long overdue. Not just for me, but for every employee who had been disrespected by people like him. The next morning, I arrived at the TechVance Solutions headquarters at 7:30. The building was sleek glass and steel, 30 stories of innovation and ambition that I had helped build from nothing. I took the private elevator to the top floor, bypassing the main lobby. Patricia was already in my office, looking sharp and efficient as always. Everything ready. I asked, adjusting my tie. I had dressed in a full suit for the first time in months. Charcoal gray, custom tailored, paired with Italian leather shoes that cost more than Brad probably spent on groceries in a month. Conference room A is set up. All attendees confirmed. Security is briefed. Termination packets are on your desk. Patricia said, handing me a tablet with the meeting agenda. Are you sure about this? Completely, I said. At 8:55, I walked into the conference room. 40 people were seated around the massive table and in chairs along the walls. Department heads, managers, team leads. And there, clustered together near the middle, were Brad, Justin, Kyle, and Greg. Brad was laughing at something Justin had said. He looked confident, relaxed. He had no idea what was coming. Patricia stood at the front of the room. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making time on short notice. Before we begin, I want to introduce someone many of you have never met in person, though his vision and leadership have shaped everything we do here. She paused for effect. Please welcome Cecil Harrington, founder and principal owner of TechVance Solutions. The room erupted in polite applause. Most people looked curious, even excited, but 4 faces in the middle of the table went pale as snow. I walked to the head of the table and stood there, letting the moment breathe. Brad's mouth was hanging open. Justin looked like he might be sick. Kyle had gone completely still. Greg was staring at the table like he was trying to will himself invisible. Good morning, I said, my voice calm and steady. I appreciate all of you being here. I know this was sudden, but there are some things we need to address regarding our company culture and expectations. I let my gaze sweep across the room, landing briefly on each of the 4 men. TechVance Solutions was built on a foundation of respect, innovation, and integrity. Every person in this room was hired because we believed they shared those values. Unfortunately, it has come to my attention that not everyone has lived up to that standard. Brad tried to speak. Mr. Harrington, I held up a hand. I am not finished. My tone was not loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. He closed his mouth. Over the past 24 hours, I have reviewed personnel files, performance reports, and conduct records for several employees. What I found was deeply concerning. Underperformance, dishonesty, disrespect toward colleagues. These are not the behaviors of people who belong at this company. I nodded to Patricia. She began distributing sealed envelopes to Brad, Justin, Kyle, and Greg. 4 white envelopes that felt heavier than they looked. Mr. Hutchins, Mr. Crow, Mr. Mendez, and Mr. Farmer. I said, my voice steady. You are being terminated effective immediately. The documents in front of you outline the reasons, your severance packages, and the terms of your departure. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings under security escort. Your access credentials have already been deactivated. Brad shot to his feet. You cannot do this. You cannot just fire me because of some personal grudge. This has nothing to do with personal feelings. I said, though we both knew that was not entirely true. This has to do with performance metrics, documented complaints, and behavior unbefitting of this organization. You were warned 2 months ago about your conduct. You chose not to improve. That is on you. Justin looked like he was about to cry. Please, I need this job. I have bills. You should have thought about that before you consistently missed deadlines and showed up late. I said, actions have consequences. Kyle said nothing. He just stared at the envelope in his hands like it was a bomb. Greg finally spoke, his voice shaking. This is because of what we said yesterday, is it not? At the coffee shop. The room went silent. Everyone was watching now. What you said yesterday showed me who you are, I replied. But what I found in your files showed me you did not belong here regardless. The two things just happened to align. Security appeared at the door. 4 men in uniform, professional but firm. Gentlemen, if you will come with us. Brad looked around the room desperately as if someone would come to his defense. Nobody did. Slowly, the 4 of them stood and followed security out. The door closed behind them with a soft click. I turned back to the remaining employees. Let this be clear. I do not tolerate disrespect, dishonesty, or mediocrity. If you are here, it is because I believe in your potential. Do not make me regret that belief. Meeting adjourned. People filed out quietly, some glancing back at me with expressions ranging from shock to admiration. Patricia waited until the room was empty before speaking. That was intense, she said. It needed to be, I replied. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text came through from Diane. Cecil, we need to talk. Please call me. I deleted it without responding. An hour later, another text. Brad told me everything. I had no idea. I am so sorry. I turned off my phone. 3 weeks passed. TechVance Solutions moved on quickly. The marketing department was restructured with new hires who brought fresh energy and ideas. Morale actually improved. Turned out removing toxic people had a way of lifting everyone else up. I heard through the grapevine that Brad and Diane were having problems. Apparently, losing a 6-figure job puts strain on a relationship, especially when it happens, because your husband insulted your ex without knowing the full story. I did not take pleasure in that. Not really. Mostly I just felt sad for both of them. Sad that they had built their happiness on a foundation of looking down on someone else. Diane tried reaching out 3 more times. Calls, texts, even an email to my work address that Patricia forwarded to me with a raised eyebrow. I never responded. Not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say. We were different people now. She had made her choice 2 years ago, and I had made mine. Neither of us owed the other anything anymore. As for me, I went back to my quiet life. Same apartment, same coffee shop, though I picked a different corner now. Same simple routine. The only difference was that now when I walked into the TechVance building for quarterly reviews or major meetings, people knew who I was. They treated me with respect, sure, but more importantly, they treated each other with respect. That mattered more. I learned something important through all of this. Success is not about proving anything to anyone. It is not about the car you drive or the clothes you wear or making sure everyone knows your net worth. Real success is building something meaningful, treating people well, and being able to sleep at night knowing you stayed true to yourself. Did I enjoy watching Brad's face when he realized I owned the company? Honestly, yes, I am human. But that moment of satisfaction faded quickly. What lasted was the knowledge that I had built something real, something valuable, and I had done it without compromising who I was. People will always make assumptions. They will judge you based on appearances, on what they think they know. And that is fine. Let them, because the ones who matter will see the truth eventually. And the ones who do not matter will reveal themselves through their own actions. I do not regret the way things turned out. Not the divorce, not the years of struggle, not even that afternoon in the coffee shop. All of it led me here to a place where I am content with who I am and what I have built. And that is worth more than any amount of money or any fleeting moment of revenge. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is becoming so successful and content that you forget why you were even angry in the first place. And that is exactly where I am now. So, what do you think? Have you ever been underestimated by someone who later regretted it? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth is not defined by other people's opinions. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that quiet strength is still strength, and sometimes the people who talk the least have the most to say. Take care of yourselves and remember, never judge a book by its cover. You never know who is writing the story.